Welcome back. I'm sure you found watching our coverage of the situation in Kwa-Zulu Natal distressing at times. I think one of the things that is going to stay with us for a very long time is how many children have been killed, how many have been taken by the raging floodwaters before their lives even really began. And then there's the other longer-term impacts. Imagine being a child in a primary school in KZN where there was no school for a long time during the pandemic and no school meals, and now a flood like this. The number that we have is that at least 57 children have been taken in the flooding. Gugu Klaba is the Director of Programs at Save the Children South Africa. Ma'am, good afternoon to you. 57 children being taken from us. It's a very high number. It shows us how vulnerable young people are in an environment where we have flooding like this.
Good afternoon, Stephen, and good afternoon to the listeners. Yes, it definitely does. And we have been receiving reports on children that are missing. So the 57 is talking to children that have passed on, but no, not those that we have not yet found. And it does seem like there are difficulties in finding some of the people that are missing. So these numbers are expected to grow as time goes on.
We know that particular... I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Please continue.
No, you can go ahead, Stephen.
We obviously need to work out what do we do right now. And there's probably short-term things that we need to do and longer-term things that we need to do. I'm going to come to those in a moment. But I'd imagine for young children, what we really need to do is make sure they've got safe and nutritious food.
Yes, definitely. And that is why then Save the Children, because we always work with networks of children and families, we already have a list of over 630 children that need clean water supply, food, blankets, and clothes. And so from tomorrow, we'll be distributing some of the food package vouchers, and we are still looking for other funding in order for us to be able to take in water tankers that are going to be provided to those families. And as we go into the homes, more so in Inanda, you'll find that there's more than what we know now.
Is it quite difficult to actually get to places where children need this help?
It is very difficult, such that our teams will have to maybe drive to a certain extent and then walk in. And of course, we are worried about their safety. So there's need for us to work with other non-governmental organizations like Gift of the Givers, so that we can access some of the areas that are difficult to access.
I think there's another issue now. I would like, if we can, to talk about some of the longer-term things we need to do now, which is that schools play such an important role in our society. I mean, we think of schools only as teaching our children, but they don't do that. They teach our children, sure, but they also make sure our children are safe for 7 or 8 hours a day. They also give our children food. That perhaps sometimes is the most important thing government does, is the school nutrition program. They also maybe keep an eye on their parents. They will know if a child's being abused, a teacher will pick it up. These things are all really important. So many schools have been damaged. Do we need a big national effort? I mean, would you like the President maybe to announce tonight that there's going to be a national effort to make sure those schools get up and running, even if they don't have proper buildings?
Yes, definitely. We would like the President to do so. Yesterday, the Premier of KZN was also requested to make an announcement in terms of the need to ensure that schooling doesn't get delayed. We've had a lot more delays, so we wouldn't like that to happen. So now what we are proposing as Save the Children is that we've got children that are in early childhood development, which means, one, they are in the community health centers, which are shelters. Some of them are in homes where there are relatives and other people that are taking care of them. Can we have access to those and provide education in that place through caregivers and through community-based workers that can help caregivers to teach children at that stage? And then in basic schooling, there's a need for us to identify where those children are, because some curriculum is online. So can we get tablets to those children who can use them and be able to continue with their schooling? The biggest challenge now, Stephen, is that even internet connectivity phone lines, electricity are damaged in those areas. So a lot more effort needs to be done to put in place the infrastructure so that we can be able to use that in order to teach some of the children that we can teach from a home setting and in schools. And one other thing that we need to do is to find the schools that have rooms where we can relocate some of the children as a makeshift whilst we are fixing the schools that are damaged. So that's basically it in terms of education.
I suppose what we want, I mean, you tell me, Gugu, you know more about this than I do. We don't want this one flood to change a young child's life forever. We want to try and be able to help them recover to the point where they were before the flood.
Definitely. Definitely, Stephen. I've indicated previously that, look, the child has seen the floods causing the damage. The child has seen a family member or a parent being taken away by the floods, and the child is now destitute. So this child is psychologically affected. So the shelters that we have right now need to have social workers, need to have responsible caregivers who are going to attend to the needs of the child, talking to the children so that they understand where the children are at, so that we can be able to salvage their psychological status now and give them the support they need, because for them to be strengthened psychologically, they need a responsible caregiver next to them. And then you need a person who will understand that how else can I protect this child given this status? Because one other thing that's likely to happen, when you are in a shelter, you've got a lot of people, some who don't care actually about those children. So there's a need to safeguard the safety of these children. So you need people who are alert, because in that same space, there are predators who are going to be looking at abusing the children. So it's important for us to do that. And remember, we've got migrant children who have lost their parents or who are lost themselves. So we also need to be on the lookout on who else is there and what are they getting? What language do they speak? Can we speak to them so that we can provide the care that we need? So there's a lot more than just basic needs. And it's also the psychological effects that we need to attend to now so that we can reduce their effect in the future.
There's so much we need to do. I would imagine that I think almost all of us in South Africa would prefer for our children to not have to grow up in a shack. You would prefer children to grow up in a bricks and mortar dwelling. And yet we know that that is not going to change. There are, I think the number must be very near 1 million, perhaps more, children who are growing up in a shack. I don't know if there's any other alternative at this stage. People talk about, I think they call it alternative building technologies. Maybe there's something else we can do to make shacks safer for children. Is that something that concerns you? I mean, this is where, as a journalist, this is where so many of the stories that I see affecting children come from. It's children whose parents are forced, through no fault of their own, to bring up their children in this way.
Okay. Stephen, I agree with you fully. And Save the Children has been in conversations starting from National Treasury. The situation we have right now is that when budgets are being developed, very little is contributed to activities that are going to help a child to improve the quality of life of a child. So it starts by budgeting properly so that there is the appropriate housing in order for us to deal with the right of a child to comfortable boarding. Now, after that, when you go to the municipalities, what kind of services do we budget for that will help a child? For instance, right now, if bridges have collapsed, it means a child cannot go to school. If schools have been destroyed, it means the child cannot go to school. So how prepared is National Treasury, province, municipalities to take care of the needs of a child? And how do we contribute, investing in them properly so that we can build them good home structures, good school structures, and infrastructure for them to get to school? So those are some of the conversations we are currently having. And I think government as a whole is learning from this experience that as long as we do not provide good housing, it exposes us to even a more expensive consequence. So it's better that we do the right thing now in order to prevent some of the distractions occurring, which are even more expensive to take care of. I mean, right now, people are injured. People need psychotherapy. So hospitals and clinics need to be available to take care of the needs of these people. Some of them are on chronic medication. They will not be able to access that medication. So health services will have to pay more in order to help these children, to help these families, because it's not just the child, it's also the immediate family of that child. So all those needs need to be planned for before in order for us to prevent spending so much that we're spending right now.
Gulu Xaba, thank you, Director of Programs at Save the Children South Africa. I really appreciate the time. In a moment, more on how we manage the disaster relief fund. We'll speak to Wayne Duvenage, the